I ask you, Secretary Benson, will you be the voice of reason in the administration and urge Trump to stop waging a war on American consumers and on housing or affordability and putting the economy at risk? Yes or no? You don't have to explain.
Representative Waters,
will you be the voice? Will you be the voice? Will you be the voice? Will you be the voice of reason? Will you be the voice of reason?
A study
yes
from
no?
Wharton University
reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
Was the mass unfettered immigration.
Mr. Chair, will you let him know that when I ask
the time does belong to the gentlewoman from California.
10 and 20 million immigrants
Can you
took
shut
up the
him
housing stock of working Americans, and can you maintain some level of dignity?
Gentleman's time has expired.
No, my time has not expired.
Your time has expired. And the gentleman...
The gentleman took up my time. I think you should recognize that, Mr. Chair.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Well, if you want
Chair, parliamentary.
if you want to protect him,
The chair
Mr.
recognizes the vice chairman of the
Mr.
committee,
Chair.
Mr. Heising.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant, biological men? Can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool. And
No, yes/no questions are about the truth, doctor. Let's not make a mockery of this proceeding. This is about science and evidence, and I'm asking you. You know, the United States Supreme Court just heard arguments yesterday at great length on this question. This is not a hypothetical question. This is not theoretical. It affects real people in their real lives. And you're here as an expert, called by the other side as an expert, and you've been telling us that you follow, right, you're a doctor, and you follow the science and the evidence. So I just want to know, based on the science, can men get pregnant? That's a yes or no question. It really is, I think.
I think you're trying to reduce the complexity of a lot.
I'm not. I'm trying to get, it's not complex. I'm trying to get to an answer, and I'm trying to test, frankly, your veracity as a medical professional and as a scientist. Can men get pregnant?
I think you're also conflating
This is
male
extraordinary.
female with...
No, I'm not conflating male and female. They're two different things. There's biological men and there's biological women. And I want to know, can men get pregnant?
What you were talking about is biological...
You're not going to answer my question, it sounds like.
Biological males.
This isn't hard, doctor. Can men get pregnant? Yes or no?
The 3 clips you have just seen are the basis of this episode. So let's get into it. There's a growing sense, a nagging feeling here at ThinkTanked, that we appear to be leaning more to the right than the left. That's not something we're comfortable with. And if you have the same impression, but you're also seeing what we're seeing, you may feel the same way. We're prepared to apologize for giving you that impression. But before we do that, we think it's only fair to explain why we've arrived here. Americans are not getting what they paid for, and they're certainly not getting what they voted for. Sure, the voter can expect the usual amount of sniping, name-calling, and exaggerations that's synonymous with either party, and at times we actually welcome it. What we cannot accept is what we are seeing in today's politics. We have a Republican Party in power, and while they make their fair share of mistakes, they show a genuine attempt at rectifying the problems caused by years of bad management. On the other hand, we have a Democrat Party that is doing everything they can to oppose the governing party, oppose the changes, and apply extraordinary energy to bring the other party down, ably supported by an activist administration, a biased media, and we repeat, a lot of dark money. It's unacceptable, and frankly, we're sick of it. If it was a fair fight or there was fair reason for their actions, then okay. But that's not the case. In what may be one of the most corrosive periods in modern U.S. political discourse, we repeatedly see tactics that go far beyond disagreement. We see inflammatory rhetoric designed to provoke rather than persuade. We see premature accusations delivered before facts are established. We see narratives that later collapse under scrutiny. We see fraud cases, illegal conduct, and abuse of authority exposed in courtrooms, long after the public damage has already been done. And too often, these actions are justified under the banner of protecting democracy, or doing it for the good of the country. That is not governance. That is power politics. Ask yourself why. There's only 2 possible answers: money and power. Bad actions do not produce good results for you, the voter and taxpayer. They cost you. They do their best through bad actions to hide their motives, to hide the truth. But those actions collapse the moment you decide to actually check the facts and apply reason. ThinkTanked does its best to stay neutral. As we have mentioned, we do lean right, but with what we feel is good reason. So instead of asking you to trust us, we're going to do something far simpler. We're going to show you what we see. We're bringing you some receipts.
85% of white people favor it, 82% of Latino, 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this: voter ID is not controversial in this country.
71% of Democrats like this idea, so why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0, and I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance, if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate.
There have been repeated calls for voter ID at elections. Voting is a privilege of legal citizenship. It defines participation in a nation, and people are protective of it. So citizens are asking a simple question. Why should non-citizens be treated as if they hold the same voting privileges as legal citizens? That isn't ideological, it's practical. Protecting election integrity shouldn't be controversial. Figures aired on outlets including CNN show strong support for voter ID. Roughly 83% of Americans support requiring identification to vote. That support extends beyond party lines. Yet when the issue came to a vote in the House, the bill passed 218 to 213. All recorded no votes came from Democrats. So there is a clear contrast between national polling and the way the vote broke. We're told fraud is rare. We're told ID laws would disenfranchise minority communities. But polling shows support for voter ID remains high across those communities as well. So if broad public support exists and the people supposedly being protected do not overwhelmingly oppose the policy, what exactly is being protected? We're also told voter ID creates barriers. Yet in daily life, citizens use identification constantly to work, to drive, to travel, to access services. Why should voting be the single exception? Opposition continues even as documented irregularities surface, not grand conspiracies, but repeatable failures in process. When weaknesses are identified and left unresolved, people stop accepting that they're just mistakes. So the question becomes, why resist safeguards when public support is this high and the vote fell almost entirely along party lines? Loose systems don't require conspiracies. They only require advantage. The solution is simple. Make voter ID law. Ensure free, accessible identification for anyone who qualifies. Remove genuine barriers. Enforce meaningful penalties for abuse. That protects voters. That protects elections. And it removes the argument.
This is my fifth such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it.
After voter ID, a pattern starts to emerge. Much of the political energy on the left isn't focused on governing. It's focused on one man, Donald Trump. Trump dominates the conversation. Headlines, speeches, hearings, campaign messaging, even when he isn't directly involved. Opposition by itself isn't a policy, and fixation isn't leadership. Governing requires something harder: ideas, trade-offs, solutions, and ownership of outcomes. But instead of hearing what would be done differently, we hear why Trump must be stopped. Over and over again. Here's the problem with that approach. If Trump disappeared tomorrow, what would replace the obsession? What policies would suddenly appear? What solutions would be offered? What direction would be set? Because leadership isn't defined by who you oppose. It's defined by what you build. And when opposition becomes identity, governing becomes optional. This constant fixation also serves another purpose. It keeps the conversation emotional. It keeps people reacting instead of evaluating. And it keeps attention locked on a personality instead of performance. That may be effective politics, but it's poor governance. So the question isn't whether you like or dislike Trump. The question is simpler. Is this focus producing better outcomes? Or just louder arguments? And if all the energy is spent fighting one person, who's actually doing the work of running the country?
That the most powerful people, primarily men around this world, regardless of political party or industry, were complicit in, if not completely engaged directly in. So the fact that our president is very likely a pedophile himself and definitely protecting pedophiles should be the only story, frankly, and would be if there wasn't such, the decentralization that we have right now and the saturation and chaos of all of the news that's happening around the world.
It's a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald.
I am so sorry to my world. I am so sorry to my world. This is not what we want.
Political rhetoric has become increasingly extreme. Language once reserved for moments of genuine national crisis is now used for routine political disagreement. Terms like threat to democracy, authoritarian, or fascist are no longer rare. They are frequent. And when everything is described as an existential threat, nothing is. Inflammatory rhetoric doesn't persuade, it mobilizes, it hardens, it divides. It may energize a base in the short term, but it erodes trust in the long term. And that isn't what citizens elect leaders to do. It's not what we paid for. We didn't vote for constant outrage. We didn't vote for permanent crisis language. We voted for governance. When politics becomes theater, when speeches become performance and outrage becomes routine, it stops being leadership and starts being grandstanding. And grandstanding doesn't fix roads. It doesn't secure borders. It doesn't balance budgets. And it doesn't calm a divided country. Strong language has a place, but it should be rare, reserved for moments that genuinely demand moral clarity, not deployed as a daily tactic. Because rhetoric that burns everything down leaves nothing stable enough to govern, and nothing solid enough to rebuild trust.
So why does this keep happening? Why does the temperature keep rising? And why does it sometimes feel like everything leans in one direction? That's a fair reaction. And if you've reached that conclusion, we understand why. But before accepting the apology we offered, it's worth understanding the mechanics. Because this isn't just ideology. It's incentives. Outrage drives attention. Attention drives influence. Influence drives money and power. The louder the outrage, the greater the reward. Media platforms grow. Political fundraising surges. Personal brands expand. But here's what doesn't grow. Stability. Trust. Effective governance. And that's where it affects you. Because escalating rhetoric doesn't just fuel debate. It raises the cost of governing. It makes compromise harder. It makes cooperation rarer. It makes every issue feel existential. And when everything feels like a crisis, nothing gets resolved. You don't benefit from permanent outrage. You live with its consequences. This doesn't require conspiracy. It requires only a system that rewards heat more than clarity. Breaking that cycle doesn't begin in Washington. It begins with what we reward, what we amplify, what we excuse, and what we refuse to tolerate. Because if we keep rewarding escalation, we'll keep living inside it. Join us again when we bring another episode of Think Tanked.